This is Kocho Shinobu from Demon Slayer. Cold, blunt, and maybe even sociopathic. Underneath that brutalness lies kindness and jokes on Gyu. Physically incapable but far from weak. An attack from the insect Hashira and your mind turns to mushrooms. For this video, we are going to be unboxing the 1/8 scale figure from Aniplex and Wayne. I got this figure from hobbygenki.com. I purchased her on Thursday, June 16th of 2022. She cost 18,990 yen with FedEx shipping for 4,190 yen. I had a discount voucher code from an earlier mistake by Hobby Genki for 645.24 yen off. Altogether, that made my total 22,534.76 yen, which turns out to be $168.81. I used my 0% foreign transaction Venmo credit card. This figure shipped out on Friday, June 17th. It got delivered on Wednesday, June 22nd. If you want to save some money, buy from overseas. If you're not comfortable with the risk of buying something straight from Japan, just go ahead and buy it domestically, but that comes at a premium price. This will be my third Kocho Shinobu figure. I have the Figure Art Zero version and the Kotobukiya Art FX J version. And now I have the Aniplex / Wing version. Before I start unboxing this figure, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. And don't forget to check out my blog at otaku.com for other anime related content. And I want to give shout outs to Rico Love. Hey, I got nothing but love. And JMind12. I appreciate you guys' comments. Now back to the figure. Let's go ahead and unbox this figure. And this box is a bit smaller than the Gyu Aniplex box. As you can see, the overall size of the product box itself fit really snug inside the brown box. It was nicely wrapped around this bubble wrap. Alright, just like the Gyu box from Aniplex from the previous video, it pretty much has the same kind of concept as that Gyu box, but instead, obviously, Kocho, her design is purple. Here you have a nice little butterfly design. And of course you have the Demon Slayer kind of typeface on the box. Very, very basic, but hey, you don't really need to get too fancy. It is what it is when it comes to the presentation of the box of what the figures are in for these scale figures. I don't really have a big problem with it. Most importantly, hopefully the figure is in one piece. Right, I forgot to mention there is a little dent in the box. It doesn't look like the shipping box had any kind of dents on the box itself, but I'm guessing this dent came from before it got put into the box. Here's kind of the inside design of the box. Alright, here we have the parts of Kocho Shinobu, and it looks like she only comes in one piece, which is freaking awesome. The fact that she only comes in one piece reminds me a lot of Figure Art Zero. So this figure does not require any assembly. The only thing you want to be careful with is there's a bunch of different little plastic pieces to kind of shield all the little intricate parts about this figure. So just make sure you're not just ripping it straight off of her, because as you can tell, all the parts of her base, it looks like it can fall off if you're like a little bit too forceful with it. But first impressions in general, this base, I might like this base a bit more than the Kotobukiya one. So far, that is just my first impressions. The base is just incredible. There's a bit more detail into that base, so it's just whether or not what I think about the figure herself. All right, let's take a look at this figure. Looking at the price of this figure. If you were able to snag it from Japan right now from Hobby Genki or Solar's Japan or another website, you'll be paying roughly $140 for this figure. If you're paying surface parcel or the slower shipping option, you'll be looking for maybe around $160. With fast shipping with FedEx, which comes typically within a week, I only paid around a little bit under $169. The great thing about Aniplex figures is that they have partner stores in the US that you can get subsidized prices. My preference has always been to go to rightstuffanime.com. For me, even if it costs me a little bit more to pay for shipping, I don't mind because I don't have to pay up front. With the Otaku mode and then the Crunchyroll store, you have to pay up front. And also, when the Japanese yen was stronger against the dollar, the prices buying it overseas and from the States was a bit closer. Now, to me, it's like an absolute steal to buy it straight from Japan for those Aniplex figures. But of course, if you're buying from the US, you'll probably be getting it after Japan's distribution. So if that's still okay with you and with that premium price, with an 1/8 scale figure of this quality, it seems to be a totally reasonable price to maybe up to $250. I would pay for this figure. The box that it came in, the shipping box was only slightly bigger than the figure box itself. It was wrapped around some bubble wrap. The figure box itself did arrive with like noticeable dent on the front of the box. I'm assuming the box got damaged before it was put in the shipping box. I could be wrong though, so it did come with a dent box. That's all that really matters. Overall, the price with the fast shipping for $169 to me is an absolutely great deal for this figure. Getting this figure from any of those Aniplex Plus partner stores for up to $230 is still a pretty reasonable price if you're buying it from the US or, you know, domestically, wherever you're from, you know. And also, like, yeah, a lot of people hate the Crunchyroll store for, you know, sometimes their poor packaging. I haven't had that experience, but I only bought from them twice. But they have a really lenient return policy. So if anything happens with your figures, you don't like something, they'll most likely take it back in that same condition that you got it in. So that is one of the huge upsides for buying domestically. So let's take a look at the aesthetics. At first, when I unwrapped this figure, I was pretty blown away by the look of the base because all of the smaller like butterfly sculpted details, it's hard to see how amazing it actually is from the pictures. But when I was able to see it up close and I was able to zoom in on the cameras, you can see exactly, you know, what I'm talking about. It just looks like really amazing. It has like this kind of pink to this clear kind of color, which looks pretty cool. It matches the figure. And like the pose of the figure, it's one of those things, if you're okay with figures, you know, being posed like upside down or, you know, they're not naturally standing up. So to me, when you're looking at a figure that is not in a natural kind of stance, it looks kind of funny. It looks kind of jarring for your brain because your brain is always trying to get your eyes to autofocus, but the figure's upside down. So it kind of makes me dizzy. That is one thing about this figure that, you know, it's cool. I like the concept, but in actuality, when I look at it sometimes, it might be a bit too much for it to be upside down. Pose-wise, I like what they're going for, but in actuality, I'm not too big of a fan, but I still like it. You know, this figure is a 1/8 scale. I was taken aback a little bit by how much smaller it is compared to the Kotobukiya RFX-J figure, and just how similar in size it is actually to the Figure Art Zero version. I'll talk about comparing the Kotobukiya one and the Aniplex one in a bit. It did come like pretty significantly smaller in a really smaller box than the Gyu Aniplex figure. Pretty sure they are both 1/8 scales. And also on the base of the figure, even though it looks really cool, really good, there are parts of the base where like the plastic sculpting, there are softer parts of the base. It comes like wrapped in a lot of different plastics to kind of help make sure that the figure does not break. So that just kind of tells you just how fragile some of these parts can be. When it comes to the paint, this is where I might have, a little bit of frustration over. It's kind of, low to moderate frustration with the paint. When you look at her kimono, they opted to shade in more of the black lines. Everything there involves more intricate detail of the figure. There's always a higher risk of paint defects, and that is what we kind of sort of have here depending on which part of the figure that you're looking at. It's the worst on the back of the figure. The good thing is that it's at the back, it's underneath, because she's upside down. Her kimono, it's kind of, you have to look under her, so no one's going to be looking under the figure, no one's going to be looking at that direction at all. Besides that, if you're looking at any other parts of the figure, you can slightly notice there's some painting that's a little bit off on the kimono around the edges. To me, it doesn't warrant, super harsh criticisms, but it's close and toying with the frustration that, as I'm looking at it, okay, there's might be something a little bit wrong here, but when you look up close, you kind of see, hey, some parts, it doesn't look, it can be better, I think that's ultimately my conclusion with the paint. It's it can be a little bit better. So on her leg and ankle area, there's a little bit of paint smudge. It can be better. On the edge of the kimono, you can see kind of the paint lining, and there's similar issues with the Kotobukiya and the Figure Art 01, so it's not like this is only Aniplex specifically, because the way that these are figures are painted, it all seems like they go through the same kind of process to kind of paint these figures. So I can't really super hate on them too much, but overall I still it still looks good. It's just that when you look at it, I was like, hey, they could have did a little bit better job. That's all I'm saying. So comparing the Kotobukiya one, the Kotobukiya Art FX J 1/8 scale to the Aniplex 1/8 scale figure from Aniplex and Wing, they're both listed at 1/8 scales, but the Kotobukiya one is just plain bigger. It's bigger. Which, I like bigger figures, honestly. I want cool, big, humongous things. Okay, besides the size, the Aniplex one, it's still a decent size. It still looks nice. So this is kind of still preference to people, whatever your preference on the scale of it. The Kotobukiya one, it's just bigger. And also the Kotobukiya, the Art FXJ figure, it has a purple base, and it still has kind of that, butterfly design. The Aniplex one, there's just more going on with that one. I just like the base more. I just like the extra detail that they had in their base, but I still like what the Art FXJ figure looks like with their base. It's a really cool concept still, but I do edge it to the Aniplex base. Both bases are fragile, but the Aniplex one has some really softer sculpted parts that you can easily see and touch and feel oh, this is a lot softer. This is if I brush through this spot of the base, it's definitely gonna fall off. So that's just one thing to note. On the Kotobukiya one, because you have that extra attachment to attach to the base, overall there is a little bit more leeway in any accidents happening with that figure. It just feels like it's a little bit sturdier than the Aniplex one for sure. So judging by the poses, the stance of the figures, I just like the Kotobukiya pose more. It just looks nicer. It's a lot easier on the eyes. She has her sword unsheathed. It just looks way cooler with a sword in her hand, and the way that she has it, I just like the Kotobukiya one more. The Aniplex one, the pose, even though she's upside down, there are a lot of cool elements like the base. The fact that she is upside down, her face looks really good as well, even though it's upside down. They still did a good job with her face. It looks just like the character. When it comes to the face, I would be fine with either one. having something upside down is just like my eyes are always trying to like autofocus and trying to make out like what this figure is trying to do. So yeah, the Kotobukiya one is just better in my opinion. When it comes to the paint difference, the Kotobukiya one looks more thinly penciled in parts on the kimono. The Aniplex wing version has that more defined bolded black lines on her kimono. Like it's really bolded. The RFXJ is just like a little pencil line. They both look pretty good, but I think anywhere in between that would be like the happy medium, and I actually probably would, the Kotobukiya one, it could be, they could have made those lines a little bit darker, made it a little bit more bolded. Maybe the Aniplex one, the lines could have been, not as thick, but either way, I do like both, but the fact that it is bolded more on the Aniplex figure, you can see how some of the paint could spill over to the other parts of her kimono. And one little interesting detail is like the katana flower part of her like sword sheath thing. There's a slight difference. Like the Aniplex one looks better. There's a little bit more detail in that. But the Kotobukiya one, the fact that, she has her katana out, I still just like that idea more than having, hey, look at this part of her sheath. Just having the sword out and it's just a better look to me. But that is one thing about the Aniplex 1 figure that is kind of cool and kind of interesting detail. Lastly, price-wise, it's going to cost you less to get the Kotobukiya 1. It's listed at 12,825 yen. So that comes out to be roughly $95. And there was a restock at Hobby Search, and if you could somehow find the Aniplex one listed around that Hobby Genki price, it'd be that 18,990 yen, which comes out to be around 140 bucks. So the absolute deal and the better figure, in my opinion, is that RFXJ one. But if you guys like the Aniplex one, like, you guys like it more. I still hold the stance that I like the Kotobukiya one more. I prefer the pose, quality, and overall size of the Kotobukiya one just a bit more. If I had to choose, I would recommend that RFXJ Kotobukiya figure. If you had to ask me right now to pick which one, it is that one. So either way, you can't really go wrong with either, but that is pretty much all I have to say. Let me know what you guys think about this figure. Which scale figures of Kocho do you guys like the most? Maybe it's not the Kotobukiya one. Maybe it's not the Aniplex one. Maybe it's the Alter one. Maybe it's, the Funny Knights one. Maybe it's some other figure that I haven't checked out too much in detail with. But yeah, before you guys comment, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. And don't forget to check out my anime and collectibles blog at otakusin.com. And if anything happens with these figures, I am updating it there. Yeah, I appreciate you guys. I'll see you guys on the next video.